Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be talking about an application to become a representative payee, what a representative payee does, and their responsibilities. Before we get any more into it, please make sure to like the video if you enjoyed the content. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below, and be sure to subscribe and turn on your bell notification so you'll know whenever a new video launches. All right, so here we are back at Google. The name of the form, if you wanted to send it in to become a representative payee, is SSA 11. Realistically, anytime that you apply to be a payee, it should be done in person at the office. Over the last couple of years with the pandemic, they were a little bit flexible on that just because the offices were closed to the public. But now I would imagine that everything's reverting back to kind of the normal rules and procedures that they would follow. So anybody can apply to become somebody's payee. And if you were going to mail in that application, let's say you're at the hospital with a family member or maybe at a nursing home or an assisted living, something like that, they could do it there and then send in the forms. There are a couple of things to address. I would say most notably, a lot of family members or representatives will try and present something called a power of attorney. The Social Security Administration, because they are a federal agency, does not usually recognize power of attorneys how you think that they would. And the reason being is because if you have a power of attorney, it's probably through a county or a state court system. And again, being the federal government, that's why they created something called representative payee, is because if you, let's say you lived in Florida and that's where your power of attorney was from, and your family member or loved one was in an assisted living in a different state because of better care or maybe the insurance coverage or maybe veteran status or something like that had to do with it, that's essentially the reason for that. Now, there's, I guess a good way to put it would be priority over authority, right? So where the Social Security Administration isn't going to recognize your power of attorney, meaning that if you just show up with one, they're not just going to talk to you because you have that, it does put a priority on you becoming the representative payee. As I mentioned before, anybody can apply to become anyone's representative payee. So if you had, let's say, maybe, a family member that didn't have your best interests at heart. Sometimes that can happen. And they wanted to, if it was a situation where they're trying to steal grandma's money or something like that, they would go into the local Social Security office and basically do the interview. It's a mandatory in-person interview. And what will end up happening is if the person is not there, meaning the beneficiary or the person who receives the actual Social Security check, in this example, we'll say grandma. If grandma's not physically present there, then what will end up happening is they'll send a letter to grandma saying, this person came in today and applied to be your representative payee. If you do not object to this person applying to becoming your representative payee, in 14 business days, we are going to select them to be your representative payee. So that basically means that if grandma was worried that that person was going to steal their money or, not have their best interests at heart, we'll say, then grandma would have to contact the Social Security office and say, no, I don't, or somebody else could say, no, I don't want this person to be grandma's payee. And it's usually, there's normally 1 to 2 family members that look out for that particular person. And they've probably, if they have a good head on their shoulders and are trying to do everything kind of like by the book to make sure that there's no hiccups, that's where you'll maybe get with like an estate planner or something like that. And then you'll develop that power of attorney. And again, where Social Security doesn't recognize power of attorney, it's not to say that they're going to completely disregard it either. So if you were the person that had that court paperwork that said, I am kind of like, the responsible party in charge now because, grandma, maybe she has dementia, Alzheimer's, or she's not doing well, she has an illness, whatever the case may be, or she just doesn't want to deal with Social Security. That's common as well. Then what Social Security should do at that point is they should still take the application from the person. That will still happen. And they should be recording a copy of that court document that's presented. And the reason being, and they should also they can put a kind of like a message on the record saying, there's a power of attorney for this person, stored in the electronic database. So they can review it at any point. The purpose of that is if you did have, so let's say you started off with the good head on your shoulders family member that's taking care of mom or grandma, whatever it may be. They go into the office with their power of attorney, they apply, they get selected, Social Security retains a copy, and then you have this disgruntled family member over here that, is trying to do whatever, and they go in to apply to become the representative payee. The technician at Social Security should see that note on the record that there's a stored court document that says that there is somebody that's responsible for this person. And when they're faced with this new person coming in to apply, if it were me, I would say, okay, well, we already have paperwork on file saying that somebody else is kind of responsible for, property, person, or medical decisions. You need to bring in court paperwork that is more recent or supersedes what this person has already brought us. And that is how you would block somebody who's not, authorized outside of Social Security's realm to kind of make those decisions and kind of take over that money. Because that's essentially what a payee does, is they manage that person's Social Security benefits for them. So if they have those expenses of assisted living or rehab, or even, if let's say they're still at home and they're trying to take care of, the bills and all that, they're basically on that person's record, so they can update, the phone number, the bank account, the email, the address, all that stuff. If grandma gets that letter from Social Security saying, hey, we need more information from you, the representative payee can now call and ask all those questions and do that without really having to bother grandma, for whatever's going on. Okay? So if you were going to mail in the application, here we are back at Google. If you go to this first link here, which is SSA, it just basically goes into the policy of what a technician would be reading. And it basically says that you should be using the electronic payee system. But again, if you're at a hospital, an assisted living place, or something like that, or you're trying to anticipate the questions that are going to be asked, I found it on this link here, which is pl.usembassy.gov. When you come here, this is the actual paper application. Again, the Social Security Administration is going to, they're probably going to urge you to come into the office, but if you fill this out, they're not going to, it's easier on them because now they don't have to make an appointment for anything, right? So you'll put the name of the number holder, and any forms that come from Social Security that say number holder, they're talking about the beneficiary or the taxpayer that's directly, the primary person, right? So this would be grandma, basically, in this situation. You would put grandma's Social Security number. Let's say grandma was a widow, right? This might be grandpa here, and then grandma would go down here. This would be grandpa's Social Security number is the primary record that's being paid off of, and then grandma's number being, this is her, the beneficiary. Now this would be like lives with the institution. So again, this would be like assisted living. How often do you visit this person? And so on and so forth. A lot of these questions are pretty straightforward. Some of these you probably won't have to answer depending on the situation and kind of like your family composition. So if you were to show up with grandma in the office, there's going to be a form, right? So they'll say, is it okay if we take the application for such and such to be your payee, and they'll handle everything. Grandma's going to say yes or no. They'll take the application, and then they'll end up being a form that they'll sign right there to select the person that day. So if you show up with the person who receives Social Security funds to the office and apply to be the payee, and they agree, like, yes, I want this person to be the payee, they'll sign a form, and you'll be selected that day. If the beneficiary is not with you, then you have a mandatory 14 business day waiting period, and on the 15th business day is when you would appear on the record if there's no objections as the representative payee. So this would be a situation where let's say, they're bedridden, they're in the hospital, whatever the case may be, and you're trying to, do everything kind of off the cuff and start the process to kind of get everything handled. Then you would go there in person. They would get the letter as we discussed before, and they would go from there. If you're somebody that is maybe you have a payee, let's say that you're a younger person and, maybe you became disabled at a younger age. For example, my oldest brother became disabled when he was 19. He was in a really bad car accident, which is usually the case for any younger male. He got into a really bad car accident. He's in his 40s now, but my mom was his payee for the longest time. And he ended up getting himself in a position where he moved to a different state that was better for him and his conditions and kind of his living situation. And after a while, he wanted more independence and he wanted to see if he could manage everything himself. So he went into the office and applied to become his own payee. Whenever you're a person in this situation, you have to have some sort of proof from essentially a third party. It's usually a doctor that says that, you're good to go on your own. So the second form that kind of comes into play here is the SSA 787. This may or may not be a public form. We're about to find out. Okay, so here's a version of it. Let's see how old this one. This one is from it looks like July of '92. So this is probably a little outdated, but is fundamentally the same. I can tell you that the form today looks very much like this. So you're going to put the person's name, the patient's name, whatever, right? Realistically, you're going to go to a visit, whoever your primary care is, or maybe your mental health professional. If you have a therapist or psychiatrist or psychologist, whatever it may be. And they're going to put the information there. And they're going to put, when they last saw you. And then they're going to put whether they believe that you're capable or not of managing your own affairs, right? So this would mean paying your rent, paying your utilities, going grocery shopping, preparing meals for yourself. Like you can be an independent person. You just have these, conditions, but your conditions are being managed now in a place that are better than what they were before. So if, let's say it's a situation where your conditions aren't physical, they're mental health related. Normally when you first start to struggle through your mental health issues, you'll probably go through a number of different medications to try and figure out which one works best for you. And as you do that, it can oftentimes be a struggle. But once they kind of hone in on, what works for you and manages your conditions, whether you're manic, whether you have behavior disorders, whatever the case may be, once you get that stabilized, you might go from being incapable to capable. So your doctor would mark the appropriate yes or no box. If they mark yes, meaning that you are capable, they have to put kind of an elaboration on that. Like, I feel that this person, these are this person's conditions, and I feel that, that they're better now, or that they can manage these things now. If they put no, they should also put the reason why, of course. And that form will end up getting sent to the Social Security Administration directly. If it's given to the beneficiary or the person who is disabled, this form would have to remain in a sealed envelope with the doctor's letterhead on it to ensure that they didn't just go to Google, fill everything out themselves, and then sign it. In a lot of cases as well, what should be done is the Social Security representative should end up contacting, and I can tell you I used to do this in the past, it does happen. They will call the doctor's office just to confirm, like, hey, I just wanted you to know, we got this form from your patient, and I just need to confirm that you completed this form and not them. If there's any question about where it came from, or if, let's say, the seal on the envelope was broken or something like that. And that's essentially the application process of either applying to become somebody's payee or becoming your own payee so that you can manage everything yourself and be more independent. Now, If you get selected to become somebody's representative payee, you are essentially the responsible party for that person's benefits, and reporting any changes, whether it's in their mailing address, their phone number, their bank information, as well as anything that could affect them getting paid. So let's say there was a person that is on disability benefits and they go back to work. If you as the payee do not report that change, that they went from being unemployed to employed, and that those wages from the employment have a negative or an adverse reaction to their benefits, meaning that they became now overpaid, you are the responsible person for that. So what will end up happening is they'll get a letter in the mail, as well as you. So as the payee, you get all the same letters that the beneficiary does. But you'll get a letter saying this person is overpaid and they owe us X amount of dollars back. We're either going to suspend or terminate their benefits, and you have so many days to either remit this money in full or make a payment arrangement. If you're the representative payee and it was your fault, and well, realistically, it would be your fault no matter what if the wages weren't reported, then that overpayment can potentially stick with you. And if you were to, let's say like 10 years went by and then you applied for retirement benefits, that overpayment will actually go to your record and you'll be responsible for paying it back. So super important not to underestimate, the responsibility of being somebody's payee. If they get married, you got to report that. If they have, and realistically, if they did get married, it should probably be the spouse then applying to become the representative payee. So if you're in a situation where your mom or dad, and then your child who's receiving disability benefits of some kind gets married, realistically, they'd probably want the spouse of that person to apply to be the payee because they live with them, they share all the same bills, things like that. But again, if you had your court paperwork saying otherwise, then you might stay the payee as well. I have experienced personally in the past where there was somebody who was receiving childhood disability benefits. They got married to somebody who was able-bodied and not disabled. They were married for a couple years before they told the Social Security office, and this person was actually overpaid by about $15,000. They did have a payee, and that payee got stuck with that overpayment because they didn't tell the Social Security office that the person got married. So these types of things do happen. They are not uncommon, meaning that they aren't like rare. These are real situations that really happen, and I think there's a lot of people out there that underestimate the responsibility of becoming somebody's payee. You want to make sure that if you are going to be their payee, that you take that seriously. That you can't, if you get any letters from Social Security, that you read them. I normally recommend that you sit in a quiet spot and you read any letter that you get twice. And if you have any questions, to call the local office who sent it. Another responsibility of the representative payee is you will get an annual, depending on the situation, if you're the representative payee for a minor child, this would not pertain to you, but if the child was an adult or a spouse or whatever, or another family member, it would. When you become somebody's representative payee, from the time that you were selected to whenever that period ends, whether you terminated that responsibility, which you can do. You can terminate yourself and say, you know what, I no longer want to be the payee. If it ends up being a hardship for you, or you don't, maybe you're not communicating with the person regularly. You don't know if they're going to work or not, or doing anything that would affect their benefits, and you don't want to take on that risk of possibly being responsible for paying any money back. So don't feel bad about that. If you have little to no communication with the person, maybe they're transient for whatever happened and they're kind of bouncing around from place to place. They got no phone number or anything like that. That can happen as well. But you will get every year you'll get an accounting form from Social Security that basically says, we gave you X amount of dollars. How much did you spend? How much did you save? Is there any in the account? What account is it in? What is the routing account number? What bank is it? And then, are you managing this money properly? It's like 7 or 8 questions. They're very straightforward. The form gets read by a machine, so it's one of those things where you got to color in the lines. If you are even $100 off on that form, so let's say it says we gave you $10,000, you said you saved $5,000 of it, and you spent $4,800 of it, you will get a follow-up letter saying you didn't account for that for part of the money, which would be that last $100. We want to know what happened to it. If you get so many of these kind of secondary letters or phone calls, there will become a point where they will remove you as the payee and suspend that person's benefits until they come in with this letter right here that we're talking about, this form right here that we're talking about, the 787, and become their own payee, or they have a new payee, somebody that is willing to become the new payee. So super important. That when you get those letters, you fill them out timely. If you have any questions, I recommend that you call, your local office as well to address that with them, and you go from there. I hope this video was able to give you some insight on the responsibilities of a representative payee. Again, it is not to be taken lightly. Whoever does it should be steadfast in that duty and making sure that they're really doing the best by whoever they're the payee for. Because it really does make a difference in the person's quality of life, especially if they can't manage those benefits themselves. I mean, it is a tremendous help, and at the same time, it's a big responsibility. So don't take it lightly. If you enjoyed this content, please make sure to give the video a like and subscribe to the channel and turn on your bell notifications so you know whenever there's a new video dropping. If you have any questions about something that I covered in this, whether it's the forms, the process, or kind of like the what ifs of what could happen, just leave a comment down below and I'll address it as soon as possible. Thank you so much, guys.